You're listening to Radio Flange Goblet, and coming up now is the Robin Doyle from a Shed in Edinburgh sponsored After Movie Diner.
You're listening to the sweet sounds of the After Movie Diner. Support us at patreon.com/After Movie Diner. Or I'll punch you in the teats. Rate and review us on iTunes, Earthling. And now, here's your host, Jon Cross.
Hello, I am your host, Jon Cross, and I just want to remind everybody that over on YouTube, Facebook, and our website, we have a brand new interview with Brian Trenchard-Smith, all about his new book, Adventures in the B-Movie Trade, which is available now on Amazon. Links, as always, in the program description on our website. Please do check out the book. It's awesome. And returning guest for the third time, Brian Trenchard-Smith and myself had a wonderful conversation all about it, now available on YouTube, our Facebook page, and on the website. Please do watch, enjoy, share, tell your friends about it, like, comment, rate, and review. Thanks. But Jim and I have been chatting briefly about how at the moment we're sort of in the rarefied position that because we are either smart TV / Roku / Apple TV users, and I myself purchase a lot of streaming services that don't allow advertising. Every time I'm away, like I currently am, and I occasionally see either cable news or cable programming or whatever with the adverts in it, you realize kind of what the rest of the world sees all the time, and what I see only minimally. So the hellscape that the rest of the country is living in kind of makes more sense. But what were we? You said something about like it is much better just to switch off. But then what was I about to say? That I was about to talk about something.
Oh, good. My bag is here. I've got to go.
I've got it. No. Here was the thing. So I said I blame the media, right? The news media predominantly, but the media in general, because they're all trying to just sell pills with hideous after effects to bovine middle America. But you said you blame people and people work in the media. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I get it. Like, we can all sit there and be like, it's this group of idiots, or it's this group of people, or it's this people of a...
No, I don't mean people as in it's this group of people or that group of people. I meant people as in the sense of human nature.
Human nature. No, totally. Yeah. No, totally. But my thing is this, is that human nature in its existence doesn't necessarily have a built-in responsibility, whereas a construct such as the news media should have a built-in responsibility. And the reason why I would therefore blame the media outside of just blaming people or individuals,
right,
is that we are all susceptible to the 3 for £12 deal. And what I mean by that is, when we were back in the day buying VHS tapes from HMV, for example, if we saw a 3 for £12 deal, we would very often find any old tat to complete that 3 for £12 deal, because even if there was only 2 tapes that we wanted, we would complete the 3 for £12 deal because it was 3 for £12. Like, how can you pass that up, right? And if you are constantly, as a way of life, being bombarded with the equivalent of the 3 for £12 deal, which is, sure, I'll take this pill that might help with my whatever, but by the same token, I might also get, inflated limbs, gilling of the neck and face, oranging of the buttocks.
Gilling?
Gilling, like gills forming.
Oh.
If that's the deal that you make with existence, no wonder the world is in the state that it's in. But do we blame the people who are susceptible to the 3 for $12 deal, or do we blame HMV for only allowing 2 good movies out of 10 to be part of the 3 for 12 quid deal. You know what I mean?
But I find it interesting that you think that these are different people. Like, I think the people who are susceptible for the 3 for 12 quid deal work for HMV.
No, it's not that I think that they're
different, mate. It's a Venn diagram.
I understand.
You've got people who are susceptible to the 3 for 12 quid deal.
Yeah.
The crossover with people who work for HMV is almost 100%. It's a smaller subset, right? But it's not like these people are selling something to these people. It's just they're all people. Give them the chance.
Right.
You know what I mean? If someone had said to you, someone had walked up to you in that HMV where you were going, I've got Fright Night, I've got Candyman, and I don't know, I guess Hellraiser 5 is apparently, that might be my best, right? If at that point an HMV employee came out and said, we'd like to hire you to work for HMV to choose the movies to go in this thing, and we'll pay you a salary and you get a company car, you'd have bitten their fucking hand off.
Right, but that's not how it works. So
Why not?
So the 2 things that are wrong there. First of all, whatever movies that are in the 3 for 12 quid deal, that has been decided, possibly even at a studio level, but has certainly been decided at a much higher level than the, lazy hippies that work in HMV. And I count myself as a lazy hippie, so I'm not. That's not derogatory. I'm just stating it. And the people up the top don't care. They just have 500 copies of Ski School that they need to shift, and they know that if they have a premium title like an Evil Dead 2 or a Hellraiser or whatever, that someone will buy Ski School in order to get Hellraiser and Evil Dead 2 for 12 quid, right? So those people at the top, first of all, they have an agenda. Like, it's not just, their agenda is not just like, let's see if we can put out a deal and people will buy it. Like, they have an agenda, and their agenda is, I have to get rid of Ski School. I have too many copies of Ski School, right? And the second thing is that the people don't have a responsibility. HMV, if they want to be good purveyors of film, have and I agree, a very low level responsibility. But in this metaphor that I'm apparently beating to death, have some level of responsibility.
If it was never alive in the first place.
Right. Have some level of responsibility to make sure that every purchase I make in HMV is not Ski School. Right.
So what you're saying is, you, as an individual, should not be expected to have responsibility over your purchases. But HMV should have responsibility to not sell you crap.
No, yes, but I was using that as a metaphor for the
nanny state, mate. That's what you got going on there.
No, but I was using that as a metaphor for the news media and the fact that the news media is entirely propped up by a drug industry that wants to sell people crap. And I'm just saying, if you want to stand there being all hoity-toity news media and we're the fourth estate and we're shouting truth to power and blah, 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 you can't also do it while reaping the rewards of a hellish landscape of madness that is.
I don't think the news media is
drugs,
like selling, because like drug advertising is there's not a lot of money there. It's what's called mostly DR, right? That's why when you watch like VOD or whatever, like anything where the show's been up for a long time or will be up for a long time, you get the drug adverts in, or if you watch any of those ad-supported things at like 2 o'clock in the morning, that's what you get. There's not a lot of money there. They're everywhere, but they're not really a premium thing, because most people don't want to, like most like Nissan or Ford or Burger King or whatever, don't want to advertise in news, because it's like, after the break, we'll talk to a man who ate his mother's face and then shit on a picture of the Pope. And then it's like, hey, how about a Burger King? And whoa. So they don't advertise that. So the reason they have news channels is because they're massive corporations and they want to have a voice. They want to use the news as a way of framing the world for their own benefit. It's no less sinister, but it's not money for drugs.
All right. Anyway,
we're going to talk about Donald Pleasence or your like half-baked news media theory.
Sure. Hello and welcome to the After Movie Diner. I'm not even going to attempt to do the not allowed in a diner anymore. We're not allowed in diners, and we're not allowed in diners because everyone's a fucking asshole, and we live in some sort of massive hellscape filled with the kind of demonology that Dario Argento could only dream about at this point.
He could dream about it, but he couldn't film it convincingly.
Unless his daughter was willing to get a top off yet again. But what happened is of late I have been shitting out music, let's just say that. And we had not done a podcast in a long time because various different things have been happening, but basically I've been off traveling the Northeast and trying to stay out of New York and try to have some kind of resemblance of a happy existence rather than one where I want to chew my own arm off. And so therefore we just haven't got round to it. But off the back of me shitting out a second Donald Pleasence related album, the Pleasencing Two: The Pull of the Pleasence. Thank you very much, Eric Kent, for that title. Jim wrote to me and was like, I bloody love the Pleasencing Two. Can we do a season of Pleasence films on the diner? To which I went, now you are singing my song, Mr. Wallace, but of course we can, and immediately planned to jump on Skype with him, which I just think is wonderful. So tell us all about the terrible day you were having and how me and my music and how great I am saved you.
Well, no, it wasn't so much a particular day. It's just there's not a lot to feel, I don't know, is flippant the right word? Carefree about, right? To just sort of enjoy something in a carefree way without it being... it's a metaphor for Blurg or whatever, right? It's like everything's a fucking metaphor and everything's like, an accurate reflection of the troubling times in which we live. It's like, that's fine. They're troubling times. It's great that we're making art that either consciously or unconsciously is reflecting these troubling times. Brilliant. I mean, we're going to be making movies and TV shows about these troubling times Vietnam. How long did Vietnam? Vietnam has been a go-to staple for ages. This particular period of our history, can you imagine how many terrible movies are made about this? The Oliver Stone ones alone are going to be unbearable.
Yeah, we are going to get to a point where Nick Cage will play...
Oh, Nick Cage, when he gets to be like 70, will play Trump.
He'll play Trump on the moon.
Cage is going to play Trump.
Cage will play Trump on the moon fighting demon... ninjas.
No. It'll be like endless fucking the weekend when X happened, when he, punched his golf caddy or whatever.
I'm in agreement with you, and in fact, Kim and I have been watching Ted Lasso, which I'm not sure you would enjoy because the whole American English football thing. You're probably too close to the whole football thing to necessarily enjoy it. I really liked it, and I really liked it because it was exactly what you were talking about. The whole premise of the show is a non-cynical, feel-good, genuinely nice person believes in just being genuinely nice to people, and those people will hopefully be a bit nicer themselves. Like, that's the entire premise of the show. And there's comedy in there, and there's drama in there, and whatever.
But my problem is, right, I get what you're saying, but what's underlying that premise is, this is new and fresh. Most people are terrible. Maybe if I'm nice, terrible people will be less terrible.
No, it's not. I know what you're saying. It's not.
But it's impossible to escape from what that is set up against.
But let me just say.
What I like about the Pleasencing, this is what I'm saying to you. What I like about the Pleasencing is it in no way has anything to do with anything. It's not it's at least it's not about these troubling times, or it's about a more optimistic way to live, or it's a simpler, whatever. Everything is in opposition to something. But the Pleasencing is only about Donald Pleasence. It's not even metaphors using Pleasence or songs about something else that like Pleasence is like a surreal part of. None of that. That's
not true. Following Your Father's Footsteps is about something other than Donald Pleasence.
But is that? I'm assuming that's based on some kind of truth.
Oh, it's based entirely on Donald Pleasence's life.
So that's what I'm saying. The songs are about Donald Pleasence and the movies that he was in. That's it. It's not. I'm saying he's not like a funny character in a story you made up. It's not like an ironic commentary on whatever. It's purely. There's one dimension to these songs, and so you can enjoy that one dimension, and then all around it is like a bunch of really catchy tunes in very different styles, and so the whole like eclectic nature of the musical style, like what carries it through is this very weird through line of I'm going to sing songs about Donald Pleasence, and there's no pretensions to metaphor here. I just really, if you're not getting this, I really like Donald Pleasence, and I'm quite happy to sing an entire 2 albums just about that.
Following your father's footsteps, give your life to the trains. Thomas Stanley Pleasence, a station master's name, a man of soot and steam, God-fearing and strict. The passengers lived a dream, their tickets crisp and clicked. He never went where they were going, he only stayed to man the gates. They had adventures waiting for them, he accepted his noble fate.
The chorus to Phenomenon, right? All day.
Yeah.
All day.
No. So you're right. 98% of the album is entirely, purely intended to be, here is a song about Donald Pleasence. There is a couple of tracks on the album, or 2 or 3 places on the album where, much in the kin of the Mountain Goats for Charles Bronson, where the song for Charles Bronson is just about Charles Bronson. Like, it's just about things we know about Charles Bronson. It's not really about anything deeper. But from the song for Charles Bronson, you can pull a lot of your own stuff from that and apply it to humanity, right? So there were certain things in Following Your Father's Footsteps, especially, and also the last track, Never Say No, and Scouse the Mouse a little bit, but there were certain things in there where I was like consciously writing something. This is a song about Donald Pleasence, a song completely torn from his Wikipedia page, but it's a thing following in your father's footsteps, for example, and the kind of pathos that comes from that, and the emotion that comes from that.
Oh, it's a beautiful song.
It was.
What I'm saying, the beautiful thing about it is, because you're right, of course, there's you can identify with them, even in the songs about Pleasence, right? When you're just singing about raw meat or whatever, even then, what you identify with is like a certain level of a simple love of a movie because it's a bit goofy, or an actor because for whatever reason you really like there's a fandom there that you can identify with. It's not just doesn't. So all of that does exist, and in the Following Your Father's Footsteps, it's a beautiful story. It's very well told, but at a certain level,
it's about a Wikipedia entry,
Donald Pleasence and his life. And yes, you can like pull things from it, but I'm saying you're not singing the song about Donald Pleasence Pleasence's life to make a point.
No.
You know what I mean? You're not using the story of Pleasence and his dad to make a point.
No.
You're just singing a truthful story about Pleasence and his dad. And whatever you want to take from that, because it's truthful and you're not trying to be like ironic about it or whatever, then there are definitely truthful things that clearly you found in it as well. And that comes across. That's why it's a great song. But that's what it is.
Yeah, no, completely. And the ones that are about movies, like Raw Meat and Phenomena and
Those two
and The
are
Caretaker.
Such great songs. Raw Meat is a great one. Phenomena is currently my favourite, just because I fucking love the chorus to that song. It's so good.
Ooh, phenomena. Ooh, phenomena. Life is just grand when your best friend is a monkey in a wheelchair and can't stand all good. Your best friend is a monkey. Well, actually, Inga is a chimpanzee, and chimps and monkeys are very different, you see. Well, la-di-da, science, and science, la-di-dee. Donald Pleasence's best friend is a chimpanzee.
Those movie ones are really just about the movies. Like, for anyone who wants, and I don't know how deep you want to kind of get into talking about my album and how great I am, but...
Pretty deep, mate. I'm the one that suggested the fucking Skype chat.
Yeah, true. But Bandcamp have been doing these First Fridays. And I knew... because I had True a Crime, which was my previous, more serious album, almost in the bag, that I was like, well, that'll come out in September. And I was finishing it up in August, and the first Friday in August was coming up. And I was like, for whatever reason, like I remember it was Monday night, we were sat downstairs, and I was struck with this idea of, actually, I have 2 or 3 songs I wouldn't mind writing right now. And within that week leading up to the first Friday in August, I wrote that 5-song EP, Here We Are. So Here We Are. And that was just meant to be like I'll just put something out for First Friday because I know that in September I have True Crime coming along, and True Crime is going to be the big album release. That's going to have all the contributors on it and the collaborations, and I've worked on it for 8 months, and it's a whole thing. And then I had 2 collaborations that I've been planning for November and December that may or may not happen, but I kind of have them in the background. So I had sort of said to myself, well, October, I'm not going to really do anything. We've been traveling around, and True Crime is still kind of out there, and I'm trying to promote it and everything because that's really the album that I spent a lot of time over.
But the one I want to talk about is the one that took you 2.5 days.
Right. So what happened is much akin with what happened with So Here We Are. It's somewhere around midday Tuesday of the lead up to the final Friday. And bear in mind that for First Friday, not final Friday, sorry, for First Friday, I have to have the album uploaded at like midnight Thursday.
So what's the beef for the whole Fridays thing? I don't follow.
So Bandcamp First Fridays, they are waiving their fees. So if you have an album on Bandcamp's still the best game in town in terms of paying an artist. So you put an album up for $10, for example. Bandcamp takes $1, PayPal takes $1 to process the thing, and then you get about $8. It's still the best deal in town for like selling an album. What Bandcamp have been doing since COVID hit is the first Friday of every month from 3 a.m. Eastern Time to 3 a.m. the following Eastern Time, because it's midnight to midnight Pacific, basically. Bandcamp have been waiving their fees. So outside of the 8% or whatever it is PayPal takes, you get everything else. So Bandcamp is not making any money off those First Fridays. And it has built up this culture of either musicians releasing stuff specifically on that Friday to kind of get notices or whatever, or musicians doing a thing where they're like, hey, buy my album on first Friday and I'll donate all the money, which I did for the first batch of music that I did in 2020, Shambles and a couple of others. Or it's led to people supporting musicians that they wouldn't support otherwise, just because it's kind of a thing, you know. And because most albums on Bandcamp are really like $5, $6, $7, they're not breaking the bank. Most First Fridays, I have, bought albums by other artists, either bought albums by friends who had already put music out, or just because I've been part of the shows that my friend Holly puts on, or the shows that my friend Scott puts on, where I'm being introduced to new music. Very often I'm like, I like this track. I'll go buy the album for $5 on Bandcamp, because why not pay it forward, right? So off the back of that, as Matt Farley would say, deadlines are really good. Deadlines are just really good for creativity. They just really are. And what happened with So Here We Are, which was really just a kind of stepping stone to wait till True or Crime came out. Once True or Crime came out, I was like, well, I'm not going to do anything in October. And then typically lunchtime Tuesday of the week leading up to the first Friday in October, last Friday, I suddenly was like, oh, here's a couple of ideas for some songs about Donald Pleasence. And I had been threatening to do like the Pleasencing Two for a long time. And I knew that it had a kind of built-in audience because a lot of my friends are like, we think the Pleasencing is like the best thing you've ever done because it's ironic and silly and film-based, and people love like random ideas like that over shit that I actually slave over and try and make perfect. People don't care.
I'm sorry that I'm one of those people.
People don't care about that so much. But no, the Pleasencing 2 had something built in, and I'm like, can I write 10 songs about Donald Pleasence in the next 2.5 days? And it was funny because I'm sat in the kitchen where I'm normally set up at home these days, writing songs and recording them. And Kim is like, haven't you done enough? And I'm like, oh no, I'm only up to 8. I need to do 2 more. She's like, why do you need to do 2 more? Like, it's the Pleasencing 2. And you've written and I'm like, because in my head, an album about Donald Pleasence has to have at least 10 tracks on it. It's just a nice...
Well, I know what you mean.
Round
I
number.
remember when they did the Beatrice and the Wolf one. The fact that I stopped at 6 is a source of constant, personal shame.
Right. Well, because not only that, but you're like, if the first Pleasencing album had 10 tracks on it, and the second Pleasencing album only had 8 tracks on it, it's like a defeat. It's like admitting...
Wait, now I'm curious. What were the last 2? What did I nearly not hear?
Oh, good question. I think the last 2 I wrote were Raw Meat.
But that's a cracker.
And I think 4 Wives Done. I think.
Oh, those are 2 of my favourite. 4 Wives Done is really good. I really like 4 Wives Done. It's very kinksy. 4 Wives Done.
4 Wives Done, 4 Wives Done. What you gonna done with 4 Wives Done? I mean, I've had 2 and others I know had 3, but 4 done. Oh, what went wrong? Is it just that you're a ladies' man and they just can't keep their mitts off you? Is it that you're too much ball man for one woman to handle? Or is it that your eyes just like to wander? 4 Wives Done, 4 Wives Done. What you gonna done with 4 Wives Done? I mean, 4 is quite a lot, it's certainly more than most. But 4 Wives Done, what went wrong?
Well, the whole thing about... Sorry, let me just finish. But if the Donald Pleasencing 2 had only 8 tracks on it, what I would be saying... Even if Donald Pleasencing 3 had 12 tracks on it, if the Pleasencing 2 only had 8 tracks on it, it
would forever be a thorn in your side.
It would, yeah. I would forever be admitting that there isn't more to say about the Pleasence, and there is clearly more to say about the Pleasence.
That is. I mean, the fact that when I was listening to it, it wasn't just that I was struck by... I can't believe you wrote 10 songs in 2.5 days, which is, by the way, just on its... outside of being Matt Farley, that's not even possible. And also, it's not as if it's not like you're just, using the same instruments or basically kind of plowing the same furrow and making shit up as you go. Like, they're all really well crafted tunes. They're short, they're punchy, they're catchy. There's a whole weird, like, oh, fuck it, I'll just do this, right? I've got no time to think about it. So this one's going to have a weird disco vibe. And I'm not even going to second guess myself. I'm just going to go for it. So that whole spirit of improvisational adventure that, like, shoots through the whole album. And even when it's like, I'm going to do, like, a song about Pleasence and his dad, and it's going to be quite serious and quite touching. And while I'm writing it, it's going to be quite an emotional, like, the thing at the end, the back and forth between the fathers, that's, like, a beautiful moment there. And it's not as if you, like, one day had that idea. You were like Gordon Downey, like, leaving a message on his own answer phone when he had an idea for a song or whatever, right? But, like, actually just in the moment. And the whole album's like that. So the fact that it's all tied to... If it was like, oh, I'm going to write a song about living in New York, or... an album about living in New York, or, the times we live in, then it would have been, I don't know, it would have been much more all over the place and a bit, well, whatever. But the fact that it's all tied to this, like, it's got to be about Donald Pleasence and not in a... he's going to make it... Because I was expecting it to be, like, more like brief appearances or silly songs where he's a character in them, but they're not. They're all like, it's either about how much you love Donald Pleasence, the films Donald Pleasence has been in, or the real life of Donald Pleasence. But it's all like, and every single song is really good. Every single song is catchy and great. There's not one to be skipped over there in the whole bunch. And I was properly expecting, if I'm honest, in an album you wrote in 2.5 days of 10 songs about Donald Pleasence, to find myself drifting off halfway through a couple, do you know what I mean? Yeah. And potentially pressing the skip button. I'm not afraid to admit that that's what I was thinking. But instead, every song on the album that I was listening to, it got to the song, I was going, I can't believe this is another banger. I can't believe he's written another cracker. You know? It was really great. I just think it's a really... Like I said, I'm sorry to be the one that, gets more out of it. It's not because it's ironic either. I just... In my humble opinion, it's just, I don't know. I like how eclectic and free, and it's not that it's silly. It's just, it's boisterous and just really fun to listen to. And there's like a really nice, honest desire to entertain underpinning the whole thing. That I don't know. I just really like.
I've got a picture in a frame hanging above my desk. It says Donald Pleasence, and it brings me good luck. Sometimes I sit and look at it for inspiration, and it always comes. Sometimes on a bike, and sometimes by truck. It's been hanging there since the day my friend Jim found it and presented it to me on the Upper East Side. Since then I've been a devotee of the Pleasence.
No, but to kind of go back to what you were saying earlier about just entertainment in general, I agree with you. The only reason I brought up the Ted Lasso thing is because we were watching it and it came to an end and it just felt like nice. It just felt like cozy, nice. I've watched a cozy, nice thing. And I realized in watching it that while I would never stop anyone creating something that is earnestly trying to deliver a message, shed light on something, help, an oppressed minority or whatever it is. While all worthy filmmaking or TV making or whatever is completely understandable and in many cases educational and decent to be making, the entertainment for entertainment's sake, the thing that gets lost so much, the sheer joy and sheer silliness of just creating, is invaluable. Like, and I'm not talking about the Pleasencing now. I'm just talking about in general, entertainment for entertainment's sake, art for art's sake, music for music's sake. We're so bombarded. This plays into the theme of what we were talking about at the beginning of the media. We are so bombarded at all occasions, wherever we are in the world, whenever we are in the world, whatever we turn on in the world, with the world, right? Social media especially has brought the world into our living rooms with both barrels full of, bags of flaming dog shit. And on a daily basis, spray us with flaming bags of dog shit. And while a TV show or a musical album or a film that says, aghast, the fucking bags of flaming dog shit is perfectly valuable, an album that also says, oh, did you know over here, away from dodging the bags of flaming dog shit, there's a life of this balding character actor from England, Donald Pleasence, and it's kind of quite cozy, and it's kind of quite interesting, and maybe you just look at that for like 58 minutes, and then you can go back to the flaming bags of dog shit.
It's not a prism with, that you can look through and understand the world, but there's no prism. Stop. You can imagine, like, if you gave this to some arsey film critic from the New Yorker or music critic from the New Yorker,
Kermode, maybe,
like, trying to like crowbar in like some kind of prism, but what if it's not? What if it's the opposite of that? What if it's the opposite of a prism? What if it's prismless? You know what I mean?
What he's done by taking an actor that has the same first name as Donald Trump is really shine a light.
Remind us that there are Donalds that aren't Trump. Which, to be fair, is not that's not a bad.
That's not a bad thing. The Pleasencing Two, the pull of the Pleasence, reminds you that there are some Donalds in the world that aren't fuckers.
Right, which I think is something that people need to hear.
It's a valuable thing.
What interests me too about it is that thing of like clearly, you've been like you said about True Crime that you feel like your songwriting skills are so much better and they're really honed and you're writing the best stuff of your career. And I think one of the things I enjoyed the most about Pleasencing Two is bringing that certainty of your own ability to something that you were just going to like toss off. Like those albums that like, I'm trying to think of a good example, but sometimes people like toss off albums in like a week or whatever, and they're complete masterpieces because they're so good at what they do that when they sort of free themselves from I want to do this or I want to do that, and they just do something. It's, like, I don't know, like Derek and Clive a little bit, maybe, I guess. I don't know. But so I'm trying to think of a good, I know that there's musical examples of like people that.
Well, because it's the pressure. The pressure is off. Like when I do there were kind of two like comedy furrows that I tend to do musically at this point. One is albums about Donald Pleasence and one are my Christmas songs. And they're two areas where there's absolutely no pressure. I'm not holding the Pleasencing Two up against Where Our Hearts Can Be a Shambles or True Crime, both of which I consider the two best albums I've ever written. The Pleasencing Two, I get huge amounts of fun from. Like the disco track I've listened to 100 times because I can't believe I wrote a disco track. And not only wrote a disco track, because it's one thing to write a track that's a bit like disco, but produced and recorded a track that sounds like a disco track. It's not just me doing a disco beat. It's with synthesizer. It sounds like a disco track. And I'm like, I don't know how I did that, but it was super fun fucking doing.
Yeah, and that's and that spirit pervades the whole album, and I think that's why I enjoyed it so much. It's not that it's not about like good or worthy or anything. It's just for like I said, in the moment, it's not that it's a particularly bad day or anything, but in the world in which we live and what I have to deal with every day and how intense like life is and work is, and I'm sick to the back teeth of intensity. So to put on some music that was just the very opposite of intensity and was just pure entertainment, but really well done. Not like half-assed or tossed off, but just free of all constraints except a natural talent for telling a story and being entertaining and making a good tune. I really, really liked it.
Well, thank you, man.
Never say no to your part in all of this. Put on a show and at the end of it, blow them all a kiss. There is magic waiting out in the unknown. There are places where we both should have grown. Grab each and every opportunity. In Hollywood or Italy, Donald Pleasence. We are talking Donald Pleasence. Yeah. Never say you're busy, never turn down a part, knowing that every single one of them you'll hit right out the park. Never ask what the budget is. Keep your name somewhere on the poster, play the game within the biz, know the words and show up on time. In Australia or somewhere on the Rhine, Donald Pleasence. We are talking Donald Pleasence. We're celebrating Donald Pleasence. We're talking Donald Pleasence, yeah. Donald P. Let those eyes twinkle even if the camera lens is foggy. Keep the corners of your mouth up even when you're feeling froggy. Travel the world and still stay humble. Be proud that you're still part of all the.
So we should talk about raw meat though, right? Because we've been banging on for about an hour, and I probably should go in like 20 minutes. So I'm going to go. And
Let's talk about raw meat or Deathline. Just the last point I would make for anyone out there who's looking to just write album or write music in general, the weird side benefit of both Wikipedia and IMDb's trivia sections is that they are such fruitful areas for ideas, because whether you are writing a song strictly about Donald Pleasence and therefore you just Google Donald Pleasence and look up absolutely everything you can on Donald Pleasence until something goes, oh, ping, that's a song idea. Or if you are like, you're writing a song about something and a theme starts emerging in the song, like one of the tracks on True or Crime is all about the original like industrial or the advent of industrial food marketing and all the packaging and all the intricacy that went into like the original birth of like mass-produced food and whatever. And I was writing a song all about like industry and all that kind of stuff. And being able to go to Wikipedia and like Google, you're like, oh shit, I need something that rhymes with like corned beef or whatever. And then you Google like corned beef kings of the 50s and you find like these two people who started out like corned beef and they had this whole thing and then they sold their life's work to Nestle and this whole thing. And you're able to be like, oh my God, there's a whole idea here that plays into this theme and da-da-da-da. Wikipedia and IMDb trivia sections, if you're ever lacking an idea but you really want to write some music, I strongly recommend those as two fertile sources of ideas.
Right, well, speaking of which, when I looked up raw meat on Wikipedia,
yes,
Marlon Brando was supposed to be the American.
Right, isn't that insane?
Brando. How the hell did he sign on for this?
Yeah, I have no idea. Was he meant to be the American or was he meant to be? So. He was? I thought he was meant to be the sidekick. I thought he was meant to be like Pleasence's sidekick.
Well, either way, that's insane.
Of course. I mean, I can only assume that Gary Sherman was like pals with him or something, or had met him at a dinner party and was like, I have this idea about cannibals on the underground. And Marlon Brando was like, I love it, I'll do it. Where do you need me to be? I mean, I don't know.
I have to say, my biggest problem with Raw Meat, though, is that sentence you just said.
What's that?
Well, he didn't have an idea about cannibals on the underground, did he? He had an idea about cannibal on the underground.
Right, yes. No, the thing with Raw Meat and Deathline is this, and I will state this very clearly. And one of the reasons why I both like it, but also it highlights its shortcomings. It's entirely propped up on Pleasence's performance. If you did not have Pleasence irascibly cockneying it up all over the shop, it wouldn't be a fun movie. Now, there are some, quasi-decent and certainly quasi-decent set pieces that certainly inspired, stuff like American Werewolf in London and stuff years later. There's certainly some pretty gruesome gore. There's certainly, if you watch the uncut anyway, there's certainly some nice atmospheric underground London, big cavernous tunnels or whatever kind of shots. But outside of Pleasence and Christopher Lee's cameo, everyone else in the movie could be replaced by a fucking egg on a stick. The one joy of this movie is the fact that Pleasence has decided to play his copper, which on the page is just like, Inspector Calhoun, shambolic copper who saves the day. He's decided to play it as an irascible, tea-drinking, cockney, working class chap that allows for this, underpinning and subplot that kind of plays on the British class structure within the movie, and Pleasence fleshes that out in a much better way by being who he is. And the only reason I've watched this movie as many times as I have is because Pleasence is an absolute joy to watch in this film, from start to finish. And the fact that Christopher Lee signs on, Christopher Lee signed on for the cost of a ham sandwich and half a pack of Love Hearts.
Yeah, he played it for scale.
And he did it just to work with Pleasence, which shows just what esteem Pleasence was held in terms of his acting chops. And the fact that every time he comes to these roles where he's playing, a doctor or a copper or a professor or one of these things, every time he comes to one of these roles that would be very mundane for another actor, he decides, I don't know, I'm going to do this accent, or I'm going to wear this hat, or I'm going to be miserable about tea, or whatever it is. He finds something to elevate the part way beyond the station of the movie.
Well, on the other hand, I'm not sure if you know this, but according to the Village Voice, this is a better film than Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah, it's not. No. It's not, though. No.
Well, no, I'm pretty sure it is, because some guy in the Village Voice talked about how, I don't know what the metaphor is, but there definitely is one. Okay, well then that doesn't really work as a film then, does it? Night of the Living Dead has a really great metaphor, which again is not immediately graspable, but there's something there. But there's nothing here, except, like you say, there's something about a class thing, except it doesn't really work, because the only reason Mr. Cannibal kills the bloke with the bowler hat is because he's, up for a bit of slap and tickle down the tube. But everybody else he's killed and eaten is somebody normal. So that doesn't work. You know what I mean? If they'd done the film in a way that the underground station was like Bank, or somewhere in the city, and all he was doing was taking out, or like Whitehall, or I can't think of what the Whitehall tube station would be. Anyway, wherever it would be, but somewhere he's taking out
Embankment or something.
Yeah, he's taking out government types, or or rich people or whatever. I could see that, right? But it's not. It's just other than that one dude, Mr. OBE bloke, everybody he kills is like and eats is normal. And there's something about the being like the last. Like there's something. I think the problem with the movie personally is that most horror films like this would have some kind of a metaphor. They would try to say something, and you'd have Pleasence in it doing his Pleasence thing, and you'd have like the metaphor of like eat the rich or whatever, right? And then you'd have a couple of set pieces, gloomy London in the 70s, and you'd have a cracking movie. But it feels more like they didn't really care about the metaphor enough to push it. And it's really what he cares about is like the fairy tale aspect of it, like these, like the last survivors of this, of a species almost, right? He's almost like a troll under a bridge or something, like one of those Beauty and the Beast kind of like, yeah, he's a monster, but he's the last of his species, but there's empathy there and pathos about this, and like he is a monster and he like murders people for like he murders like 3 working stiffs on the underground. Like there's no, it feels like that whole class thing, although that's what we're doing with the Pleasence and Lee and the OBE thing, but like it's not actually, if you step back and think about the movie, it's not really there as a metaphor. Not really.
I wasn't saying that it was a metaphor in terms of like an eat the rich thing, but it was more that.
No, I know what you mean, by the way, about the way Pleasence plays it and what Pleasence is concerned about and how he views the whole crime and the whole situation. I think you're right. That he elevates, like there is meaning there. There's something going on in that his reaction to it. That's true, but that's not outside of him. It doesn't really exist, and that's why it's a bit flat and empty, because it's not an interesting enough thing for a horror movie if you're there to be like scared and freaked out and laugh and all the things you want to do in a horror movie, and instead it's this kind of like very slow fairy tale like thing about like the last of a monstrous creature, just kind of reaching out, and there's like nothing there, and it is sad in parts, but it's just being sad doesn't mean being good. And the fact that after this he went on to make crappy horror films instead of like interesting fairy tales suggests that. I don't know. I can't figure out why. You'd almost think he would go the other way, like he was slumming it to make a horror film, but he wanted to make something else. But then all he did was make crappy horror films after. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I think that there is there's something in the movie. I'm certainly not going to attribute it with some sort of, like you say, broad metaphor or whatever. There are certain things in the movie that are inherently interesting. I think that the movie itself is, like you say, slow. I find it unnecessarily grim, because you have to kind of go 2 ways with the cannibal. You either go the empathy route, where they're really just trying to survive and he's trying to keep his woman alive and so on and so forth. In which case, don't go quite so exploitatively grisly with the gore, or you go with the full-blown drooling monster who doesn't have any heart and isn't trying to save anyone, but is simply a monster who lives in a tunnel and is picking people off and killing them. And in which case, go as exploitatively grisly as you like.
And you can still throw in like a few moments, right? Like the great thing about horror film is you can be exploitatively grisly for most of the movie, and then throw in a couple of moments where he's a bit sad, or like there's a connection, and then you've got all you need. Like it only, you know what I mean? It only needs to happen like brief flashes for it to be effective. You'd have to film the whole thing as like, by the way, this is sad, and then go, I guess I better make it exploitative or people won't care, because then then you're just being tricked into like watching something like that's too slow.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose there's something in it about about people being ignored. Either people being ignored or people being hindered by the upper classes. And there is a little bit to be kind of threaded.
Ignored, yes, because like they have a lot of time. Like they get, they're ignored by Pleasence. The one bit of the movie I didn't care for, that I really didn't care for, was because it felt like out of character and a pointless setup to a finale, was when the American bloke runs to Pleasence and says she's been kidnapped, or no, not that she's been kidnapped, but she disappeared in that tube station, blah, blah. And it felt like at that point Pleasence should have taken him seriously or done something. And he still could have chucked him out and done something, but he kind of threw him out and then sat there and drank his tea, and that felt like that doesn't feel like Pleasence to me. He's the one that knows there's something dodgy going on in the underground. In the end, he only seems to care about the girl and what's going on down there because he gets to rub Christopher Lee's face in it. I'll solve the murder of the OBE guy. He doesn't even care about anybody else, and that feels very not right for him. Like you say, he anchors the whole movie, not the American thing. So if he ends up being a tool of your rather clumsy metaphor, then that diminishes Pleasence as a character. It feels like he should be more. He's supposed to be above all that, right?
Right.
Not feeding into it. And it feels like he plays it for most of the movie as being above all that, and then right at the end, feeds into it because he only cares about it because he gets to solve the bowler hat guy. He doesn't care about the girl. It didn't feel right to me. That bothered me.
Yeah, no, I understand that, and I would agree with that to some extent. I think the biggest fault with this movie are the two so-called young leads, the male lead and the female lead, and the reason why I think the director leans so heavily on the Pleasence and his sidekick dynamic is because the lead female and the lead male are, so appalling. I mean, they really are. They're Robin Asquith levels of awful.
Hey, now steady on. Don't go throwing the Asquith around. Willy-nilly.
No, true. I mean, they're kind of like half Asquith, half Blucas.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. They're trying to give it the full Asquith, but
yeah,
without being. The thing about Asquith is underneath his cheeky chappy persona is clearly the cold, flinty soul. Do you know what I mean? Of a psychopath.
Right.
So you can't fake that. By the way, I should say I did actually enjoy watching the movie. I didn't sound like I did at all, but I really did. Because you're right, Pleasence is a real hoot in it. I love him digging out tea bags from his teacups with darts. I like that he's always joking around. I love the scene with him and Lee. And I love the dynamic with him and the sidekick and him and the doctors. And that whole thing is I can easily watch Calhoun of the Yard, you know what I mean? From now until the end of time, it would be great. And sometimes I like being reminded of how fucking grim London was in the 70s and the 80s. And even when we were teenagers, early 90s, it was a grim fucking place. And, the everything was crumbling and old and crap, and everyone was cold. And I love that bit when he's going. One of my favourite bits is when the American guy's looking for his girlfriend, and he goes through the places that are open in London, you know what I mean, at night after the tube shut, and it's a fish and chip shop and a chemist and a hardware store as far as I could tell. But they were so these places just don't fucking exist anymore,
Yeah.
And how the trains are wobbly and shit, and I don't know, I being reminded of that is sometimes I don't know, it feels kind of fun to go time traveling back to when London really shit on.
I was having this discussion the other day. It's sort of the English American discussion, but the dichotomy of living in America is that on one hand, because their attitude is, you know, everything's got to be the best. It's got to be the biggest. It's got to be the shiniest. It's got to be the most expensive. And they have this, like, you know, mentality about it. Stuff actually gets done. However, they have no mechanism for dealing when things are just a bit crap. You know what I mean? So everything is either really great and the best thing that's ever been, or, you know, the worst kind of hell you can possibly imagine. They don't have the ability to just deal with things that are just a bit crap because they've never eaten in a roadside little chef. Like they've never, they've never tasted.
You don't know bland, grey hopelessness. You know, it's not despair.
No,
it's not despair. It's hope. It's like the absence of hope.
Right, but also you've never sat down in a greasy spoon calf and had a cup of lukewarm tea in a cup that clearly has.
Realising that's probably as good as your day's going to get. And that is the fucking highlight.
Right.
Is going, I wish my tea was hotter. Yeah. And if that's the worst it's going to get, that is the day's highlight. But that's why the whole film reminds you of how London used to be a cup of lukewarm, weak tea.
Right.
You know, just kind of crap.
But how? See, and this is the thing: is that from a psychology standpoint, it's not going to produce the next like Apple iPod or whatever, because everyone's just going to be like, "Oh fuck it, I'll be an accountant." But they're not going to, like, no one's innovating anything in English. However, it does mean that when the shit hits the fan, we have a certain, like, we almost find it nostalgically charming. We have this kind of like rosy tint glasses to something that's a bit crap. You know what I mean? And we don't tend to, although I think it's probably a bit different now because I feel like we've become, infected with the same media disease that everyone else has. But we didn't used to run around like everything was on fire if things were just a bit crap. We just were like, well, it's a bit crap. Of course it's a bit crap. That's what it is. Like the Royal Mail or British Rail were just a bit crap. But they were like, the letter got there eventually and the train got you there eventually, and you didn't question what you were sitting on that was brown and squidgy. You were just like, it's a British Rail train and the seats are brown and squidgy and we'll just accept it. And like, it's a bit crap. But I think that gives us a certain joie de vivre that is lacking elsewhere.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
It's like the Pleasencing. We don't put pressure on ourselves to create greatness, you know, every time out the gate.
Sometimes it just happens.
If a little bit of greatness squeezes through, we'll take it. We'll take it, mate. It's fine. You know what I mean? It's yeah. So that's what I think. Like the raw meat Deathline thing. It's a bit crap, but Pleasence is the kind of, you know, grumbly Cockney chappy that's going to carry me through it, and that's fine. That's enough. That's my lukewarm tea.
Well, I think that's a good place to leave it. If that's right, mate. I've got to go and do show. I think it's a splendid way to tie the Pleasencing and Deathline and the meaning of life all together in one sentence. So, just congratulations for doing that, as well as producing a barnstorming album. And I hope you now will cut to playing a Deathline.
Well, the raw meat Deathline boogie.
Yeah. Raw meat.
Also known as Deathline. Yeah.
It's great. Ooh, phenomenon. So good. Anyway, play raw meat and have a think about what you want to watch next week.
Will do, Chief.
All right, it was really fun, man.
Good times talking to you, man. Take care.
Well, have a great rest of the holiday. Actually, I'm away next week on holiday too. Okay. So maybe the week after that.
Yeah, sounds great.
Take care, man. Really good to see you.
Good to see you too, man. Take care. Bye now.
Yeah, man. Bye.
in the underground, long after trains stop running, there's something lurking in the tunnels, looking to pick off random hippies. It's got a thirst for flesh, so don't become a cropper. The only man to stop him is a working class copper. Inspector Calhoun, he's played by Donald Pleasence. This is his manner, and he's gonna catch the killer. He's got a cup of tea, but he's got no biscuit for dunking. He's hanging out with Christopher Lee, who took a pay cut just to work with him. The secret of the tunnels, it really is a whopper, and the only one to figure it out is a working class copper. Raw meat, raw meat, raw meat, raw meat.
It's also known as deadline, deadline.
Raw meat, raw meat.
It's also known as deadline, deadline.
Raw meat, raw meat.
The whole thing is quite tragic and quite a grisly affair, but Pleasence picks the whole thing up with his smashing Cockney flair. He's got an ill-fitting hat, and his irascible performance is a real showstopper. Yeah, Donald's perfectly cast as this working class copper.
Raw meat, raw meat, raw meat, raw meat.
It's also known as deadline, deadline.
Raw meat, raw meat.
It's also known as deadline, deadline.
Raw meat, raw meat.
Cannibals in the underground, well, what will they think of next? The whole business has got the fuzz and some random hippies really quite vexed. But there's one thing they didn't count on when it comes to catching a rotter, and that's the tenacity and cupsity of a working class copper.
Raw meat, raw meat, raw meat, raw meat.
It's also known as deadline, deadline.
Raw meat,